Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Shay Connolly, Executive Editor of Branded Content at GovExec. I'm excited to continue today's conversations alongside our elite underwriter, Hyland. AI has come a long way from automating simple tasks to driving real outcomes through intelligent action. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Rohan Vaidyanathan, Vice President of Content Intelligence at Hyland. We'll explore Hyland's approach to revolutionizing government processes with Agentic AI and where content understanding integrates with intelligent automation and AI-driven solutions. We'll also talk about the critical role of unstructured data and how autonomous AI agents can interpret, decide, and act, making government services faster, smarter, and more accurate. Rohan, it's great to have you here, and let's jump right in. To kick us off, can you break down what Agentic AI actually is, and how is it different from the traditional AI approaches we've seen in government so far?
Sure. Thank you very much, Shay. Great to be here, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. To jump into the topic, Agentic AI is actually quite different and very exciting approach to solving data and automation problems. In the previous waves of AI, we've seen different methods of dealing with data and the decisions that have to be made. When we were in the classical machine learning, deep learning phase, the aim was to really recognize patterns from data and to predict or classify what the next pattern meant, which meant that you had to have a lot of data ready, you had to have a lot of data labeled and train some of these models on that data. With agentic AI and with the large language models and other foundation models available to us, the amount of pre-prep and processing that we need to do as end users has significantly gone down. A lot of these models have been already trained on large corpuses of data. And when these models are available to AI agents, they are able to predict and make those decisions in a more autonomous way. So how does this differ? With agentic AI, it's really goal-driven. You have a goal that an agent or a autonomous or a semi-autonomous system is trying to achieve, and it works towards those goals by being able to retain context about that data, being able to plan and sense ahead, being able to also reason with the analysis that it is doing. So it may look at a fork in the road and look at the data available, the context available, make a decision, and then evaluate whether that decision is taking it towards its goal. So in that way, not every decision or not every decision path needs to be pre-programmed. There are obviously benefits to programming some of the more deterministic outcomes that you want, but there is no need to explicitly pre-program everything once you've set a goal and some guardrails around which these agents need to work around. So there's a lot of use of tools, as we call it, which are things that it can use to break down certain problems and resolve smaller tasks. And as it resolves these smaller tasks, it gradually keeps going towards a goal and keeps reflecting and learning and sensing whether it's hitting the goal or not. So that's the difference between agentic AI and the previous generations of machine learning and AI, where steps were more learned or programmed in the beginning, whereas now there's a more flexible path of taking the right choice based on the context of the data and the situation.
So it sounds like there's a lot of exciting opportunity here, but of course, many agencies are dealing with legacy systems and siloed content. What is the smartest way for them to start integrating agentic AI into these environments without having to start from scratch?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of it always boils down to where the data is, right? So first of all, when agents are dealing with making decisions, they're making business process decisions, and business processes are not reliant on just data from one system or the other. They have to look at the entire spectrum in a very unified manner and in a very contextual manner. So the first approach to it would be, how do you bring together all this data into one place? And one of the approaches that we take here at Hyland is, how do we look at all these data sources as a federated source of data, as a unified source of data, and bring those pieces of documents, images, any kind of multimodal data How do we bring their metadata together and have a holistic view of that? Once you bring those different pieces of data together in one view, the next approach would be to look at how do we enrich the context. And this is where the context of where a business processes and what data it needs at that point of time becomes important. If you're dealing with accounts payable documents or invoices and you want to calculate commissions, you need to understand which formula to use for which kind of vendor and how this invoice is related to a particular type of vendor. And this is where unifying data and looking at it in a consolidated manner with its metadata and the relationships in its metadata makes a lot of sense. So this is the approach that we're taking here in Hyland as well. And this is one of the ways to give AI agents the right kind of context and data at the right time. Unify your data, start breaking down those silos, start enriching your context so that the right kind of information is available while making the decision and reflecting and learning from that decision.
And as you mentioned, Hyland's approach brings together content understanding and intelligent automation. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in practice and also maybe share some examples of real impact for government agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think content and process both go together in many ways. As I said before, the decisions that are being made in the context of a process. So, if a one of the common use cases in what we're seeing with a lot of government agencies is someone files for a piece of information to be made available publicly, or that information is in the public domain, but you need to get to it. And in doing so, there are a few forms to be filled, there are a few approvals to be granted, and then the data is made available to you. Or you are taken to a place where you're able to search for the data. Think about it as city council minutes or some information you're requesting under FOIA. In this aspect, there is a notion of the process where someone comes in and fills a form or comes and asks a question, and that question is then taken into a workflow where a decision is to be made whether that content needs to be made available to the end user or not. So in this path, not only are we looking to answer questions from the user from the corpus of data that is available. So this is a very classical case of how do you use RAG-based technologies to answer questions from your database, but also in that particular workflow, what kind of user is it, and should they be made, or should that data be made available to them, is a decision to be made. And typically, this was done by humans for many of these scenarios where the data is in public domain and can be shared very easily, or if there's not so much of sensitive data, those kind of decisions could be made more autonomously, or there could be a human in the loop introduced when making most of those parts of the decisions autonomously. So this is how we're bringing together both, the retrieval of the right kind of content to a question which is asked, or to an automation which is processing data, and to keep moving that automation or that process ahead by using these kind of technologies, both in combination of the process and content.
You've been outlining some exciting opportunities here, but of course, trust is always critical, especially in the public sector. How do you build transparency and accountability into these systems so agencies can adopt them confidently?
Yeah, I think trust is probably the biggest question that we all have in front of us when it comes to dealing with AI. Trust starts with being transparent and being able to hand over control to the users as and when they request it and as and when it is needed. And it is especially more important in a lot of government use cases. Um, I think one of the first things that we are doing in order to address trust, at least, is making sure that everyone understands how we have built our systems, how data is being used, how AI is being used. We are very clear that data belongs to you, the insights from it that come belong to you, and we are not, cross-replicating this data and training it with someone else's data and trying to give you, new information out of it. So every customer owns their data, their insights, and being clear about it is super important. The other part is, as I said, making very transparent how these systems are built, meaning what models are you using? How do you collect the data? Are you training anything on that data? So being very clear and writing it down is very important, and we approach it as a way of providing AI service cards for some of our AI-driven products here at Hyland. The third part is once you have declared that data and insights belong to you, you have documented how the system works. The third part is giving access to those systems and being able to audit it, being able to explain some of those decisions through the system. So in here, explainability is a very key aspect, and it's one of the table stakes aspect, right? How did you arrive to that decision? Where did you get answers to a question from? What exact parts of the document did you combine to answer a specific question? Being able to explain that decision and being able to visually show that goes a long way in enforcing trust. And finally, being able to audit, what's been going on in the system, who came into the system, how was data changed, who made what decisions or actions in the system, and being able to keep a log of that, being able to show at the right time um, how those decisions were taken and whether it can be changed. Was there a human in the loop or was it completely automated? I think these are some of the best practices that still apply even with generative AI, with agentic AI, and it becomes even more important to apply these before rolling out some of these applications to end users.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clarity and transparency you described is also key to helping people develop an accurate, comprehensive understanding of really any new technology. So, what are some of the most common myths or misunderstandings that you hear about agentic AI as you're trying to help government leaders understand how it works?
Yeah. I think the biggest myth or misunderstanding I hear is because it is agentic AI, it is completely autonomous. And, because there is this notion of multiple agents working together and, somehow AI is going to take it all over and we can't control it. The reality is that a lot of these systems are being built with the ability for humans to control it. And this is also part of the best practice that we recommend here at Highland. And as we talked about the trust aspect of it, being able to be transparent and being able to allow humans to control it. So there are absolutely systems that you can put into place where it can be completely autonomous, and these could be, low hanging fruits or low impact actions that you want your agents to take, where you want to become more efficient, and too much time is being spent in looking at data and collecting data to answer something. But it's completely possible to put the right kinds of checks and balances in place to make these agents pause and wait for a decision, or pause and ask a human for a decision so that it is reviewed, and only then that decision is made. So there are different strategies to doing that, but that is absolutely a myth or misunderstanding that we commonly hear. And come talk to us. We'll help you figure out how to put that methodology in place.
Yeah, and Rohan, you've been great at unraveling a lot of the challenges we have in this space. So I'm going to raise one more for you. So we know unstructured data is everywhere in government. It's usually seen as a big hurdle. How can agentic AI help agencies tap into that data and make it into something more actionable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think unstructured data is one of the biggest sources of context and hidden context, I would like to call it. With unstructured data, the biggest problem is, how do you connect these different pieces of information inside those documents or images? And very often, unstructured data is used as a very broad umbrella term to talk about data which does not neatly fit into structures and databases and JSON files. So when you have an image, when you have a map of a city, or you have documents which are 300, 400 pages long, how do you then break them down into different chunks? How do you break them down and connect the context of specific context inside a specific topics inside of it. So there are various ways to do it where agentic AI is helpful. One of the common tasks that people do with documents and images and other unstructured data is put through a process of intelligent document processing where you extract and classify these documents. You separate out key terms, but then applying context enrichment strategies to it. How do you connect what is inside a city council minutes to maybe a map of the city or a project diagram that was drawn about making parks even more better in a city? How do you connect these two things when users want to come in and find information about it, or city planners and inspectors need to make approvals about such projects? So this is where agentic AI comes into play, where you can have smaller task-based agents which go and do each of these tasks. So you're either splitting documents, or you are pulling out specific pieces of information, or even a little more bigger agents, which is now trying to connect these sources of data and create those relationship graphs, or even bigger scope agents, which we call as enterprise agents or agentic apps, which do a complete workflow end to end. So you can think about permitting and licensing. That's a very common workflow which involves several different sources of data and decisions from different departments. This could be a whole agent or a collection of agent which does things end to end. And this is another way where unstructured data is flowing through different parts of that process, and a permitting and licensing agent, for example, is making decisions on where we have the right information, where we do not have, reach call out to an inspector and get their views on how we should proceed forward. So these are some of the strategies that we are employing, and how we are thinking about agents as well, in terms of, can we break them into tasks, or can they do more end-to-end processes?
Well, we are unfortunately almost out of time here, but for a last question, I'd like to look into the future a little bit. So if we fast forward a few years, how do you see the role of agentic AI evolving across government, and what should agencies be doing now to get ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I think we are in for a big disruption in the way we are doing tasks and being efficient about it. A lot of the early use cases of agentic AI would deal around how do we make processes more efficient, how do we reduce mistakes, how do we save on costs. So these could be some of the use cases that customers or government customers could prepare for right now. Um, the possibilities are endless, right? Looking into future, you can automate a lot of these workflows that we talked about earlier. You can automate a lot of uh, query requests coming in. But right at this moment, I think one of the first things that government agencies could do to prepare for that is to take a stock of what their data looks like, what their content looks like, and which parts do they need to unify in order to make this vision a reality. They may have unstructured data, they may have structured data, they need to federate that together. So how do you take advantage of technologies like the Content Innovation Cloud in order to bring and unify that data together? And then start thinking about what are some of those use cases where you either need to apply automation in steps, or you are able to think about more semi-autonomous or autonomous decisions to be made. So starting there, starting at those use cases, thinking about what those use cases are, thinking whether you have the right kind of data and unified them in the right way, and then take smaller steps towards POCing some of these use cases. I think those are some of the things that they can do right now to get started with agentic AI.
Great. Well, Rohan, thank you so much for your time today. And of course, a special thanks to our underwriters like Hyland, who make conversations like this one possible. Stick around for more generative AI workshop coming up next.